Hi guys, my name's Holly Baxter. I'm an accredited practicing dietitian and online physique coach. And today is my week 6 check-in. So I am undertaking my longest ever, which is an 18-week contest prep. I usually like to do a 8 to 12 week contest preparation, but to protect my metabolism and to take things a little bit slower, I'm stretching out this process. So if you haven't followed along on my journey so far, it'd be really great. You can go and have a look back at week 1 where I actually lay out how I set out for a contest preparation. So what I do with regard to my macros, how I set up with my training protocols and things like that. So that should be really useful for you. Then each week I usually discuss a topic of importance. So things that are coming up in my day-to-day life, like how to manage stress, how to train with an illness, or should I train with an illness, how to track your macros when eating out or traveling overseas. So there's quite a few different video topics that you can watch if you are interested in learning a little bit more about that. But this week, I want to talk to you about weight loss. So to recap, when I first started, I discussed the rate of loss. And if you don't know what that is, again, go and check out week number 1. I explain what that is. But to summarize very quickly, my starting weight is here. My finishing weight, or the weight that I would like to be when I'm on stage, is here. And then the total weeks of my contest preparation, then that will give me a number, which I'm trying to lose every single week. So far, the first 3 weeks of my contest preparation, to summarize, have been a nightmare. I managed to get through fine, but there's been a lot of interferences with traveling. I think I've been in Canada, I've been in USA, Florida, I've been in Kuwait, we've been in Germany, we've been in Australia. So with all of that travel, it's been not only really hard just to find time to get my training sessions in, but also managing the jet lag as a result, the stress of having to work between countries, all those kinds of things. So to this point in time, my weight when I started was about 70.4 kilos. I tapered down. I did really well for a week or 2. Then I went right back up with some stress and not being able to train. So I exceeded my starting weight, which was really hard for me to kind of grasp. And last week I weighed in, and I'll put some pictures up now for you to have a look. I weighed in at 70.4 kilos, and that was a no change. So I had hit my macronutrient targets perfectly. I'd had a really great week of training, but nothing happened. My weight didn't budge. So in last week's video, I was going to wait another 3 days to see if the macronutrient targets were having any effect, and they actually did. I started at 70.4, and by the Wednesday, I snuck down to 69.4. So that was evidence enough for me that I didn't need to make any adjustments to my macronutrients. So from Monday last week to Monday this week, I went from 70.4 kilos down to 68.8. So that was a really great week of training for me. I'm just going to put some pictures up for you to have a look at so you can see this week's transformation. What is the plan for this week? Okay, great. I've lost quite a bit of weight. I'm down to 68.8 this morning, and I know that in order for me to continue to lose weight, I am going to have to drop my calories, or I'm going to have to increase my training volumes, because I was already at 68.8 on Saturday, and then my weight didn't actually change when I woke up this morning, being Monday. So basically I'm at equilibrium. The output is matching my input, all the calories. So this week I'm dropping my carbohydrates from 155 grams down to 140. So it's only a 15 gram drop, but it's an obvious enough drop to help create a deficit, and I think that this will see me continue along the road of around 600 to 700 grams of weight this week. I'm not changing my fats. I'm already still really struggling to hit those as it is. If I take them any lower, I'll feel like I'm having to really heavily restrict. And before I do that, I would actually rather increase my volume of training to create more of a deficit. So my protein will stay exactly the same. And the reason that I'm not changing my protein is because my lean muscle mass is still exactly the same at the moment. So unless my muscle mass drops significantly, then I wouldn't need as much protein to maintain it. And then I could have a lower intake. But I'm wanting to maintain as much of my lean muscle mass as I can, so my protein intake will stay at around the 160 mark, which is sitting at about 2.8 grams per kilo of lean muscle for me. This week I wanted to discuss how to factor in alcohol, because I was invited by a friend to a party on Saturday night, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm asked all the time by clients, can I drink alcohol? Will I still be able to lose weight if I'm drinking alcohol? And things of this kind of nature. So to answer this, I'll try and summarize it as best as I can without blabbing on too much. But remember, rule number one, when it comes to fat loss, you need to create that caloric deficit. And as I've mentioned in previous videos, there are a number of ways we can do this. You can either increase your training volumes to expend more calories than you're taking in, or you can manipulate your dietary intakes by taking them down below what is considered your maintenance calories. So once you know what your caloric requirements are to maintain your weight or to put you in a deficit, we can then look at how to factor in alcohol. Now, there are 4 key macronutrients which we talk about. The main 3 are our proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, and each of these provide us with energy. And alcohol is also one of the other macronutrients. It doesn't get talked about quite as much, but it is still a provider of energy or calories. And it's very similar to fats, actually, the amount of energy that alcohol provides. So when it comes to proteins provide us with around 4 calories per gram. Same can be said for carbohydrates. It's around 4 calories per gram of carbs. Fats are a little bit higher. They are 9 calories per gram. Where does alcohol fit in? Well, that's kind of right between the two of them. Alcohol actually provides us with 7 calories of energy per gram. If we are going to try and factor in some alcohol, what I usually recommend is subbing it in for carbohydrates first. That would be my substitution of choice. And the reason for that is we know that our body's primary energy source is glucose, right? So that's carbohydrate-containing foods. So all carbohydrate foods will break down at some point to glucose or other sugar products. So disaccharides, monosaccharides, polysaccharides, these are all different sugars. And we also have a requirement for fats. But I'm going to touch on carbohydrates or glucose first. Our bodies, even in a carbohydrate-free diet, our bodies can still produce glucose from other metabolites like amino acids, so they are the breakdown of proteins, and fatty acids and things like this. So the byproducts of those can be converted or synthesized into glucose. So even with 0 carbohydrates, our livers can still produce around 120 grams of glucose per day. And that's for essential functions within our body. They have to function on glucose. Now, an exception to this would be our brains. Our brains can actually also function on ketones. So some of you might be familiar with ketogenic diets. I have a video about this if you wanted to learn. But for the most part, our body will use glucose. And since we can actually synthesize our own glucose production, then the obvious choice when it comes to substituting calories would be carbohydrates, since we don't actually need them because we can produce them from other substrates. So to give you an example, let's say you have your favorite wine, and I'm going to use mine. I like red wine. I love Pinots. One glass of red wine might have 130 calories in that particular beverage. So to work out how much carbohydrate you would need to substitute out to allow you to have alcohol, what we would do is go 130 divided by 4, because there are 4 calories of energy per gram of carbohydrate. So if we work that out, that is going to be around 33 grams of carbohydrate. Now, we can also use fats. However, I will say that our body does have a requirement for essential fatty acids. There are some fats that our bodies cannot produce unless we have them from food. So there are essential fatty acids that we need to take in from food sources, full stop. So if your fat intake is very low already, it wouldn't be wise to substitute out your fats because we do have that necessary or essential requirement. What I would actually recommend is a combination of both. Reason being, if your fat intake, and like mine right now is only 50 grams per day, if I was to substitute out all the fats for my red wine, for example, and let's say that red wine is 130 calories per glass, I would then divide that by 9, because that is how many calories there are per gram of fat. So whatever that number equals, it's probably around, 14 roughly. I would have to take away 14 grams of my fats for the day to allow for this alcoholic beverage. Now that's pretty restrictive. If I only have 35 grams left of fats for the whole day, that's going to make my choices my food choices far more difficult. So instead, I'll take, say, 50% from my carbohydrates and 50% from my fat. So a combination of both. Now, if you are wanting to see how that actually works on paper, I do have an article on my website which kind of gives you the breakdown and the math for that. Sometimes talking it out doesn't necessarily read clear for some people. Some people are more visual learners, so you can go to my website and learn how to do this. I actually was able to factor in 400 mils of red wine at this party on the weekend that I went to. And I still hit my macros perfectly. I didn't exceed my calories for the day. I hit my protein targets perfectly, and I substituted some of my fats and some of my carbohydrates for a couple of glasses of wine. And the best part about it was it didn't impede my performance the next day. And that leads me to my next point is there are obviously other considerations that we need to keep in mind when we want to choose to drink alcohol. And that is our ability to recover and to perform. There is actually research that shows that low to moderate intakes of alcohol have no impact on body composition if we control for A, calories, and B, protein. However, when we start to have excessive intakes of alcohol, where you're intoxicated, it obviously will impede your ability to perform the next day. I think we can all agree, we know what it feels like if you've had a huge night on the booze and you just don't want to do anything the next day because you're feeling sick. So that's an obvious reason why alcohol might not fit within, or certainly excessive alcohol intakes won't fit with a fat loss diet, because if it impedes your ability to train and to perform, then that's obviously going to set you back in regards to achieving your goals. So at a cellular level, not only does alcohol interfere with those adaptive and anabolic processes that take place as a result of weight training, it also blunts mTOR signaling and muscle protein synthesis, which is not good if you are trying to build lean muscle, of course. So that hopefully will give you a bit of an insight into how to factor in alcohol if you wanted to have a social drink. As you know, I'm 6 weeks into my contest preparation, and I have allowed that. There will come a point in time where my calories are more restricted. I don't really want to give up any of